Right, welcome back everyone. Since we have now set up our lab, so let's move on with the authentication now. So first one is the MAB authentication. What do you mean by MAB authentication? So MAB uses the MAC address of a device to determine the level of network access to provide. So basically, instead of authenticating a user with a username and password, the machine is not able to do the 802.1x or .1x authentication, then we go ahead with this MAB authentication where we just look for the MAC address of the machine and we will just provide the access to the machine. So now this is not a secure one. So you shouldn't be implementing the MAC authentication until unless it is been a requirement. So this will only be used when there is a printer or where there is a machine which cannot be authenticated using 802.1x. So you have to be very careful while implementing the MAB authentication so that what happens is like whenever someone onboarded on your network and he uses the MAC authentication and any policies or rules which are following, which are matching, that particular machine will get the access. So you have to be careful with that MAB authentication. Now, how MAP works is that before the map, you see that the user on the port is not allowed. So basically, you do have the Cisco ISE over here, and which is connected to the switch, and that is connected to our PC. So this is the one. So now this device, which is authenticating on behalf of your client PC, that is known as a NAD, that is a network authentication device. So network authentication device. So now between these two devices, it will be a radius protocol and which will not be encrypted. So radius protocol, you can see all the contents of that packet. But between these two connections, it will be an E protocol if it's in Windows 1. So it will be an E protocol where in the E port, username will be in the plain text. Username will be in the plain text, while the password will be on the encrypted one. So basically, whenever between these two ones, so username, you can see the username, but you cannot see the password, which is encrypted. But in our case, I am using the MAC authentication. All right. So in the MAP authentication, what happens is like whenever the machine is trying to authenticate, the first thing is that whenever it is connected to the switch, so it is the port and it is connected to the client PC. So on this port, by default, you can see that no packet, no traffic is allowed. So all the traffic will be dropped. The only traffic which will be allowed is the first packet, that is the EAP packet. Because on that one, the switch is able to learn the MAC address of that particular machine and it is going to forward that information to the ISE. And ISE will go through the endpoint details and everything, and it will go through the policy sets and it will return back whether it is an access accept or access reject. So once in the first thing before the map, what happens? All the traffic is being dropped and switch will learn the MAC address and it will forward the details to the ISE. Now, the authorization is that no other communication. It will not get any DHCP address. It will not get any IP address, nothing. No communication is like a zero communication. So once the map is successful, authentication is successful, that's when the ISE will send the request to the, so I can say that ISE can send the details to the switch saying that, okay, I have authenticated this particular endpoint. So this is the policy. This is the access list which you have to implement. So you go ahead and implement that particular access list. So now that you said that the access list is that permit any, that means it's able to access all over the network. That at that time it will get the DHCP address. It can go to the HTTP server and everything. After authorization, once the authentication is done, the authorization is that what type of traffic is allowed. So DHCP by default, you will get an IP address. So that's the first thing you will be allowing. Then you will be allowing the IP packet. Then you are restricting whether you want to allow the HTTP traffic, that is the web traffic or not. So basically in your organization, you could have different web servers over here. So you can implement saying that, okay, so once the authentication is successful, I don't want this PC to access this particular server, yes, you can create that access list and you can uh, stop the machine from accessing that particular web server. Right. So next thing is at the high level diagram. Let's look into that one. So now, as I said that this will be the switch which will be acting as a NAT device, network authentication device. So between the endpoint and the switch, I said that the EP protocol will be running. So EP request. So first it will request the identity, and in this process, the switch will learn the MAC address of that particular machine. So now it will say that okay, the switch will see that okay, this endpoint is not capable of doing .1x, so it will go ahead and update the I saying that okay, it is not capable of doing that one. So it will start learning the MAC address. Once learn the MAC address, it will just forward that MAC address to the ISE, and the ISE will look into that MAC address. According to that MAC address, it will forward to the switch saying that okay, I accept that request and I have authenticated the device. And after the authenticating device, it will send the accounting response like what it is trying to access, what are the details it is machine is trying to access, and all those details will be recorded into the logs. So that's how the process goes on, as I explained before also. So next, the other thing is that of what is the multiple endpoints on a single port. So basically you do have the switch over here in this particular port. So on this port, you might have a IP phone, and to that IP phone, you might be connected to the different PC. So in most of the time, this is what the topology will be like, the connections will be. So each and every employee will have the IP phone, and that IP phone is connected to their PC. Sometimes it might be connected to the two PCs, two different PCs. So in this case, now I can go ahead and configure my port in a different modes. So I can configure in a single host mode. That means I can only authenticate one device at a time. So if there are multiple devices on that particular single port, you are not able to authenticate that one. Multi-domain authentication means the IP phone will have the voice domain over here, but these two PCs will be under the data. So data domain. So these two pieces will be in the data domain, IP phone will be in the voice domain. So now you do have a multi-domain. Yes, you can allow multiple VLANs over here. So one will be accessing for the voice VLAN, another one will be accessing for the data VLAN. Multi-authentication host mode. So multi-authentication means IP port configured for multiple authentication. Multiple endpoints can authenticate on a data VLAN. So basically, you remove this IP phone now on this particular switch on this port. If there are multiple PCs connected, which requires a data VLAN, yes, you can go ahead and configure. So basically, you need to analyze what type of port it should be, what type of mode it should be the port on the switch. So multi-host now, multi-host which authenticate every MAC address. So basically now it will look on this particular port. It will try to learn as many MAC address as the switch can, and it will just forward the detail to the ISE. So that's where in that kind of scenario, you will go ahead and configure the multi-host mode. And the next one is the deployment mode. So we talked about the switch and we talked about the particular port. Now, once the port has been provisioned, now the deployment mode is like what do you want to do in that particular port? It's like a monitoring mode, just check for the monitoring. So you don't do anything much in that one. So just monitoring and you're allowing the traffic. Low impact mode, you're just allowing partial traffic. So in this partial traffic, that might include the DHCP, that might include the DNS server for the basic communication so that it can get authenticated and get the IP address. That's what you can do it on the low impact mode. And we do have one more, that is the high impact mode, high security mode. Now in this setup, now what happens is like the same thing, the switch will be there. There will be a port. Now, if I say that high security mode, that means the machine will only be allowed after completing the authentication. After completing the authentication, then it will get the switch will get the authorization. That authorization, once the switch gets the authorization of that particular PC or the machine, then only it will allow. Until then, there will be no DHCP. Until then, there will be no DNS traffic allowed by default. So it's completely stopping all the traffics over there in the high security mode. Right, so let's do the lab now. So what I'm going to do now is that in my topology, I've already installed one PC for now and the one switch for now. That should be good, more than enough. So now what I'm going to do with the ICE is that what I will do, I will go ahead and add my switch to the ICE. First, I will define the network authentication device. And after that, I will go ahead and create the authorization profiles. I will create the uh, authentication and policy sets where we define the authentication and the authorization. Another thing is that I will note down the MAC address of this particular PC, and after noting down the MAC address of this particular PC, I will make sure that in ICE, I will define that particular MAC address and I will allow the access. Whenever the PC is connected, that MAC address will be taken, and after that it will be authenticated. But with the lab, what I will do is that I will not add that particular MAC address to the ICE of this PC. I will not add the MAC address of this PC to the ICE. So I want to show you that how it is insecure while doing the MAB authentication. So once the authentication is taking place, ICE will get the details of that particular endpoint. And once it get the details of that particular endpoint, next time when it's tried to authenticate, it is been authorized. So that's how I want to show you. So the first thing is that I will go to my ICE now. I will log into that one. So first part, what I will do, I will first complete the ICE part, then I will come and complete the switch part, and then I will configure the PC. So for the PC, so we have to get the console. Okay, looks like the PC is not starting up. So I will just turn off and turn back on. So until then, the PC will be booted. All right, so let it boot. So let's go back to the ICE now. So once I am logged into the ICE, so what I can do is I can go to the administrator, and now here I can go to the network resources. Now network devices. So what I want to do is that before I define the network device, I want to define the network device group. So here I can define what type of device it is. For example, in my topology, it's a switch, and I can define the location where it is located, the office is located. So let's click on the add, and I can say that it will be switches. And here I will select the all device tab that will be included in that one. Now if I expand that one, I can see the switches. Next, click on add again, and the location will be Hobart, for example. And here I can say select all locations safe. And now if I expand the location, I do get the Hobart. Now network device profile, and here you can enable the profile. By default, there are different kinds of profiles. Cisco is also enabled over here, so I will click on Cisco. And since this is a Cisco Catalyst switch, so all the probes which are required are already in place. So I need not do anything over here. So I just need to create the groups, and the profiles have been created by the Cisco for you by default. Now, if there are any different new companies which you are trying to make that device as a network authentication device and that particular profile is not located, that's where you will click on add and add that one. So currently I have created the groups which are required. Next, let's go to the network device, and here I will click on add. Now I will say that this name will be the same. Just keep it same so that it will be easy to understand, okay, where this device is located. And here I can give the IP address that should be 192.168.1.45 according to my topology. So if I go to my topology, that is 45. Now /32, keep it /32 itself, don't change anything. Now it says device profile, but it does not say any model name or anything, just leave it. Software version, we are not interested. Location, yes, I am interested because it's located in Hobart. Device type, yes, it's switch. And now I want to do the radius authentication over here. It's asking me to select the key. I will just type in Cisco over here. Because I'm going to make the switch as a network authentication device for the radius authentication, just select this one. So once you provide the shared key, that shared key will be also, we will be providing into the switch also, and click on submit. So now we have created that network authentication device has been added. That's all good. Now the next thing is that for the PC now, what type of authentication I'm going to do, and what type of authorization which I want to allow. That would be the next thing. Right, so let's go back to the ISE and I will go back to the policies, and here I can click on the results. Now, this is the authentication profile. So by default, all the profiles are defined in this one, but for the MAB authentication, we only require this only one protocol running. We do not require any other protocol running. So we can use the default one. So that's the reason I'm not creating any new protocol list for authentication. But for the authorization now, I can create the access list over here. See, you see that by default, there are some access lists being defined. But if you want to create a custom one, yes, you will create, click on add, and you will say that permit IP any, and you will give a name like IP any underscore access. Just an example I'm showing. So click on check DACL and it should say that DACL is valid. That means your access list is valid. For now, I'm not using anything. So I will use the default one, permit all IP for any, because that's what it is, IP. That means IP any access list. Now coming to the profile now, in this profile, what I'm going to do, I'm going to define what type of authorization I want to give. So in my topology, what I want to do whenever this PC is been authenticated, I want to push that PC into VLAN number 4, and I want to allow all full access. So I will go back to my this one and I will say that, okay, I will say MAB underscore auth, and access type should be access accept. Make sure that is access accept because you're accepting that traffic. DACL name, I will say permit IPv4 any. And if I scroll down, you see that VLAN, I'm tagging that VLAN ID to number 4. So if you scroll down here, this is what the attributes we are sending after the authentication in my authorization. All right, so click on submit. So once submitted, that's my authorization profile is ready. So that means once the authentication is complete, this is what will be sent to the switch in order to implement. Now let's go back to the dictionaries. Now this is where the conditions are grouped together. So by default on the system, Cisco has created maximum of that one. You do not require to create any dictionaries. So if I go to now conditions, now this is where the conditions are. So here you can see that you do have BYOD registration, catalyst switch, but what I do require the condition is the MAB authentication, that is wired MAB. This is the condition which I require. But if in your case, you want to utilize multiple rules like this, multiple conditions, you can just grab it and put it over here, and you will say, okay, put it over here. You're customarily defining, okay, I have to do these many authentication before I implement or do authorize a machine. In that case, what you will do, you will create your own group, custom group with the custom rules in that, conditions in that one, so that it will be easy in the policy sets in order to define that. So we will see that how we are going to define these conditions in the policy sets. So I will go back to the policies and I will go back to the policy sets. Click on OK. And now you do have a default policy. If I go inside the default policy, you will see that by default, Cisco has created some wired map and wired 802.1x. But what I want to do is that authorization profiles are also created. By default, you can utilize this one too. but I want to create my own. So I will go ahead and I will click on this plus sign over here. And I will say that, okay, this will be used for the authentication. And here I will define the condition. Now, what if I have like 100 devices over here? Okay, so currently I do have only one device. Okay, so that's okay, that's fine, because one device I can define that particular. What if I have like many devices over here instead of that one? So now these two groups are located in Hobart, but this one is located in Sydney, and these three are located in Melbourne. Now there is a problem, because if I select these, all these switches are inside this category called as switches. That's fine. So what I can say to my policy, do not look for all the devices, just look inside the category switches. That means these many devices are defined inside the category of switches, so it will contact these many devices. But again, I have to do some granular, so I have to cut down still, because it will take a lot of time to probe that one. So what I can say, another condition is that the location can be Hobart. And now I am breaking down that one to coming down to just only two devices. So that's how you can make sure that your policy which you are creating is being hit actually. So what happens sometimes is that your policy is right, but the problem is that it will go ahead and it will hit the default. It keeps on hitting the default one. So it keeps on hitting the default one. That's when this one is been very much utilized. So here what I can say that, okay, I want to go ahead and define my device type. So I will select the dictionary as the device, and I do have a device type. And now I can select the device type as a switch. I can select one more condition, click on and new condition. And here I can say the device location also. But since I have only one, I do not require this one. I need only one, that is device type. Simple as that. So click on save. So if you click on this save, so it will try to create a condition which we are trying to, it's like you're grouping. So for now, I do require only this one. So for example, if I say and, the new condition will be device location will be Hobart. And now if I click on save over here, now it will ask me to save this, both the conditions which are custom. So what I can say, I can say that it is a switch location, and select from the list if you want to define that particular list, but I want to create a new library, click on save. So a new library is created. Instead of showing me what it is, it should be showing device type as switches, device location as Hobart. What it is showing me now, switch location. That's how in that one, it consists of all the policies like conditions which is required. So I will click on use. All right, so I will select the default protocols and click on save. So this is the first part where you're making sure that your policy is being actually hit to this policy. You're trying to make sure that the switches, whenever the authentication is happening, it hits this policy, not the default one. So let's go to the inside. So if you click on to the Automac over here, so if you right click on that, not right click, just click on that one. And now it is going to ask you for the authentication type. So now this time what I'm going to do, I'm going to type in MAB auth. So I'm doing the MAB authentication. I will click, and now here also the same thing. Instead of doing the MAB or the .1x authentication, if I have created the same condition group, custom group, I would have selected, but I do not have anything. So I would select the pre-built one, that is wired MAP, and click on use. Now, whenever we are doing the MAC address authentication, it will be internal endpoints, not the user. And if I scroll expand the options, in here you see that if authentication fails, you have to reject. If user not found, still have to be reject. If the whole process failed, you need to drop the traffic. So next I will go to the authorization. So here I will click and I will say that MAB AUTHO authorization, and here I will define. I will define the same condition because I don't have much to do, right? So what I will say that match if MAB authentication is successful. Okay, if MAB authentication is successful, go ahead and authorize this particular profile. MAB MAB auth profile, authorization profile. So what I'm doing is that should be MAB. So I'm just saying that authentication is a MAB authentication. So look for the endpoints. If endpoint is found, authentication is successful. But in the authorization, again, what I am looking is that, okay, it hangs up again. So in the authorization, I'm looking for the same thing. If the authentication is the MAB authentication, I want to deploy or implement certain authorization profile. Okay, so the authorization profile will be MAB auth and click on save. So that's all you have to do now. Now, the next thing is that I'm done with the ISE. That's it. The next thing is that I need to configure the switch now. All right. So before we configure the switch, let's go ahead and make sure that our PC is ready. So I will go to ncpa.cpl because our PC right now it is using the internet because I did not give any access. And if you go back to my topology, you see that it's taking internet from this particular cloud, which I want to stop the access first. Okay. So you see that this is the network. If I go to status and this one and 16, that's fine. I'll go to the properties and I will just remove that, make that one as a custom manually 192.168.1.16. I will not give a default gateway, but I will give the DNS server that should be 100. And that should be okay. Close and close. So by this one, what we are doing is that we are making sure that whenever we authenticate this particular machine, after authentication, I want the traffic to go via this way to the internet instead of going via the cloud over here. So that's what I'm stopping. So that's what I did now. I just said that management adapter, I have given no manually IP address, but no default gateway. So here you can see that it is 169. That means no IP address for that one. So my PC is ready now. Let's go ahead and configure the router, switch. So I will take the access of the switch. All right, so before I configure the switch, just make sure that ping 192.168.1.101 and 102 and ping 192.168.1.1, that's my internet, and ping 8.8.8, and that should be able to ping. So before I go ahead, make sure that the communication is happening. Now, the first thing is that I will first configure the VLANs. So according to my topology, the VLAN number is 4. So I will say that VLAN 4 and exit. Next, I need to create these switch virtual interface SVI. So I will say that interface VLAN 4. IP address will be 10.1.4.1, 255.255.0, and no shut. Now, no shut command, yes, you have to give. Otherwise, once the dynamically allocated VLAN 4 is allocated to that port, it will not come up. So on no shut, you should give that. So once that has been done, so next I have to create a DHCP. I'm making my switch as a DHCP server so that whenever the authentication happens, it can provide the IP address. So I can say that IP DHCP excluded address first, that will be 10.1.4.1. Then IP DHCP pool, I will give a name as a VLAN 4. And network will be 10.1.4.0 and space /24. And default router will be 10.1.4.1, and I can define the DNS server that should be 192.168.1.100, then secondary will be 1.1. So basically these are the things which are required for my PC, that is the IP address which will be given from this subnet and the default gateway which is be provided in this one, and the primary DNS server, that is our Windows PC, Windows server, and the secondary will be our internet. So that's to make sure that whenever you want to go to your internal domain name, you will use this particular DNS, and if you want to go to google.com, you will use this particular DNS. So now I'm done with the setting up for the VLANs and providing the access to the PC. Now I have to configure the switch in such a way that it's going to communicate with this ISE. The first thing is that AAA new model. You need to enable that AAA. Next, I want to define the radius server. I want to give a name as ISE1, and I am saying that address will be IPv4 and the address will be 192.168.1.101, and the auth port, authentication port 1812, and the accounting port will be 1813. So these are the two different ports which will be used. While authenticating, it is going to use 1812 port number, and for the accounting, it will use 1813. Those are the default ports you have to use. And key Cisco, if you remember that this is the key which we have provided in the ISE1. Now I do have one more ISE, that is the secondary one. I can define that one to ISE2. Address will be IPv4 192.168.1.102. Auth port will be 1812 and accounting port will be 1813. Key will be Cisco. Now we are providing the secondary one, but we did not configure in the secondary one. But if you remember that it's a 2-node deployment, that means primary will synchronize each and everything to the secondary. Now I have created the individual servers in the radius I. So now the next thing is that I want to define these things into the group. So I will say that radius or AAA authentication or AAA groups, because I want to create the group AAA group server radius server group, which is known as ISE. So this is the name of the group ISE, but the individual servers are ISE1 and ISE2. Here I can define now the server name will be ISE1 and server name will be ISE2 and exit. So basically I created individual servers, then I defined those servers within a group. So now I can use these group instead of saying that, okay, go to ISE1, go to ISE2, go to ISE1, go to ISE2. I will just say that whenever you want to do the authentication, just go to this particular group. Within this group, we do have two different servers. Simple as that. Now, next we have to define that AAA authentication.1x default group ISE. I am setting that whenever you want to do any authentication with .1x, the default group should be ISE. So go to this group by default. Next, AAA authentication network or AAA authorization network default group ISE. So for the authorization also, I'm setting that to pointing towards the default group, making that ISE as a default group, and AAA accounting .1x default start stop group will be ISE. For the accounting also I'm making that. So basically now I set my authentication, authorization and accounting to that particular, pointing towards to that particular group, that is ISE. Now here I have to also say that since I do show IP interface brief excluded and assigned, and you see that I do have multiple IP addresses, so I need to specify to the switch saying that you use your particular IP address to communicate with the ISE. So what I can do is that I can say that IP radius source interface gigabyte 0/0. So what I will do, I will copy this one so that it will be do not get any issues. Now I said that whenever you want to do the radius authentication, you should use this particular IP or this particular interface. That is what we have defined. Now the next thing is that I want to send some kind of information, because switch is going to learn the MAC address, which is going to get the details. I want to send some kind of details to the ISE. So what I'm going to do is that I will say that radius server attributes, and if I see that these are the different attributes which I can send it, but by default you have to send at least service number 6, that is service type attribute, what type of authentication we are doing. Service number 8, that is the frame IP address, because we want to know the IP address of that particular machine, and service number 25, that is what type of class attribute it is. So at least these three things you have to send. And apart from that, if you're interested, if you can send define all different numbers over here, but again, it will consume the CPU and the RAM. So you have to make sure that you send limited information which are only required. So for my lab, I required only three of them. That is 6 on for login and radius server attribute number 8, including access request, and radius server attribute number 25, access request include. So for login details, what are the access details, and whenever the access request is being granted, what include that one too. So once that is been done, I am done with that one. So this is what the configuration do show run, and inside that one I should see all the commands. Right. So okay. It's taking a lot of time for this certificate, so I just quit that one. So now once you say show run, and now you should see all the commands have been provided here. So all the commands have been executed. So I will just save that configuration first. Now it's time to configure our port now. I did not configure the port yet. So here what I can say, interface gig 0/2 switch port mode access. By default it is mode access, but still I'm giving over here. And next, authentication port control will be auto. And authentication host mode, I don't need to create that one anything. But what I can do, I can set that one to multi-authentication. That means use multiple MAC addresses. Authentication host mode, multi-auth. You do not require this one, but just I'm inserting that one. And I want to do the MAB authentication and no shut, exit, and save. That's it. So if you see the configuration for the MAB on that particular interface, it's very small. To show run interface gig 0/2. And you see that this is what I have done. 1, 2, 2, and 3. You do only require 3, but just to show you that you can set your host mode to multi, auto, single mode, and everything. That's what I've given. So once that is done, let's go back to our PC now. Now the PC, first what we have to do is that we need to enable the service. So I will type in the services, go to the services app. I will enable that authentication, EAP authentication. That should be under the wired auto config. Right click and click on properties and make sure that it automatically starts whenever the PC starts and PC shutdowns. Start and stop automatically. And click on apply, click on OK, and that's running. So if you see that it is trying to attempt to authenticate, now you see that authentication failed because we did not provide the ISE with the details. So if I go back here, go to the operation live logs, and now I can see that it has been authentication failing because I did not say to my set to my ISE that if the endpoint is not available, do not allow the access. But the other thing which I want to show you that even though the endpoint is not available, when I do the next time authentication, it will be authenticated successfully. So what I can do here now is that I will go to my PC and I will disable that adapter for now. And I will go to my switch and I will say that do clear authentication session. I cleared the authentication session. And now I will right click and enable. And this time I did not get the message saying that MAB authentication has been failed. Because if it was failed, until now I should have got the message. So if I go back to my ISE and if I do a refresh, now you see that ISE has authenticated. That's so strange, right? So that's why the MAB authentication is not secure. You have to be careful. So if I go back to my work centers, if I go back to the network access identities, now this is where I can see that, okay, there is one endpoint that is been authenticated with the location Hobart from the switch. and you see that it's a lookup. And the authorization, so this means that it is totally hitting my actual policy which I wanted. So if I go back to my policy and policy sets, and here if I go ahead and do, oh shit, I should have done the refresh, but I did the reset. Let me do a refresh. Okay, that's been okay. You can see that it's turned to number 2. That means it's hitting my policy. Authentication policy has been hit. So if I go to the authorization and do a refresh, and you see that authorization is also hit. So now if I go back to my operation and live logs, and this PC should also get the IP address. I don't know why it did not get. So it still did not get that one. So it should be the switch. So I will say that interface VLAN number 4 and no shut exit, because we are allocating dynamically the VLAN number 4. So I will go ahead and check that one also in the authorization profile, just to make sure that, okay, MAB authentication, and yeah, VLAN number 4 we are sending. That's fine. So let me go to the switch, and you can see that still it is not up. So do show run interface gig 0/2. So it's not allocating that one. So we have provided the VLAN number 4. That should be good. And also we said that we permit all traffic. That's all good. So let me go to the switch, and if I say do show authentication session interface gig 0/2 details, authentication success, but it did not implement the IP access list or something. So this is what the problem with the virtualization. Sometimes it works perfectly, sometimes it doesn't work, because you see that it is not implementing the access list which we wanted. So let me do one thing. Let me go ahead and close it, disable it, and do clear authentication session one more time. And again, do the authentication one more time, and see whether I'm able to get the IP address or not. Okay, so if I go back to the switch, go back to the operation, live logs, click on OK. We did not made any changes, so that should be fine. Okay, still the same thing. Okay, it's trying to identify. Hopefully it should get the, and also do show VLAN. Let me check whether the VLAN is been created or not. VLAN number 4 is been created. That's correct. So it's not implementing that one. It's trying to identify. And if I say that do show authentication session interface gig 0/3 details, and still the same thing, it's going to the default one. So it's just the switch problem which is happening. That should be fine. But basically you will see that particular access list, that is IP permit for IP allow. Okay, let me do one thing. Interface gig 0/2 switch port mode, switch port access VLAN number 4, and do a shut. So I will do a shut and no shut. Let me see if that will make any difference. Okay, its port is up. Let me do one more time authentication now again. So it doesn't shows me that VLAN interface VLAN is up. So that means I need to download a different image, the latest one, so that we can implement that one. But for now, that should be fine, because we can see that the authentication is successful, and it ICE is successfully sending the implementation, what to be implemented. Now, the other thing I think might be missing is that the dynamic authorization. Let me remember that command. That should be radius server dynamic AAA server dynamic. So there should be one command that should say that dynamically configure. I'm trying to remember that one. AAA. Let me see if I can find here. AAA attribute, cache, comment criteria, password, AAA server, radius, dynamic author, and I will say that client will be 192.168.1.101 with server key as Cisco and define that one. That should be fine. I need to define one more, that is dynamic author. Client will be 192.168.1.102. Server key will be Cisco and exit. Do save that. So let me see if I got the IP address. Still I did not get that one. So hopefully this command should change that one. So what I can do is that default interface gig 0/2, and I will just disable this one, and interface gig 0/2 switch port mode access. Authentication port control will be auto. Authentication host mode will be multi-auth, and MAB no shut exit. So save that configuration. So configuration is saved. That's all good. So let's go ahead and enable the adapter once again. And let's come back to the ISE, and we see that, okay, it's authentication happened once again successfully. Authentication is happening, there is no doubt, but the only thing is that it's not getting the IP address from the switch. So if I say that do show run section DHCP, all right, so you see that DHCP pool has been configured, that is 10.1.4.1/24. Do show IP interface brief excluding unassigned, and that is what the IP address. So everything looks fine, but still it doesn't is the switch which is giving me the problem. All right, so what I will do, I will just get the another image, I will install that one, and I will be back. All right, so I have installed the new image. That new image is of so this is the name of that new image. That is what I have installed. So after installing the new image, you can see that now the VLAN came up. Authentication has been done. So if I go back to my PC over here, you see that I'm able to get the IP address. So once I get the IP address, do show authentication session interface gig 0/2 details. And this is where I can see that this is the MAC address that is being authorized for the data. Host mode was multi-auth, and the IP address which it got was 10.1.4.2, and the VLAN number is 4, and the you see that server policies IP permit all IPv4. This is what I have said on this ISE to push that particular. So if I come back here now, the ISE also got the update saying that I got the IP address. This is the policy has been implemented, and now you can see that authentication is successful. So now let's look into the logs now. So I will click on over here. So detail report. So you just click on this session one so that you will get a detailed report, and here you will see that what are the steps which has taken in order to complete that authentication. So now you see that device number one, it makes sure that the device is from the device type is switch and the location, and after that it makes sure that the looking for the endpoint and found the endpoint in the internal ID store. So coming to the internal ID store, if I go back to the workstation network access, going to the identities, and I should see that I do have one internal identity, and here you see that by default there is no endpoint profile right now. But later on, when we come to the profiling, that's when we will try to enable and make sure that it has the right profile for it. So now this is where I can see the identities. and the details on all those things. So if I go back to the dashboard now, I should see there should be one endpoint shown up on my dashboard. So authentication, the authenticated device is number one, and NAT device is one, and endpoint is also one. So that was the, and if I scroll down here, you see that authentication was succeeded, and using the call check, that is the MAB authentication, using that switch one as the NAT device. And if I scroll down and here, I should see that the service type is called check, audit session, method is MAB. And the MAC address is this one. And I also should see the details of the access list. So if I come back to the operation, live logs, and let me select this one. Downloads, you see that it has sent the DACL. The DACL was IP permit IPv4 traffic. Now, since that PC have all the access, so the other thing is that I need to configure my router because my router doesn't know that information. So at this moment, my router doesn't have any information about this particular address. So I need to fix that one in my router. That should be 192.168.1.98. Okay, 192.168.1.98, and I will log in into my router. And after that, I can just go to webfig, and I will go to IP, and I will provide the IP routes, and I will add a new route that should be saying that 10.1.4.0/24. Default gateway will be 10.0.0.1, and the routing table should be main, and click on OK and OK. So now let's go back to the PC, and I will try to ping that my router first. That should be ping 10.1.4.1 default gateway. I'm able to ping to the switch. And if I say ping.10.0.0.254, that's the edge. I'm able to ping. And now let's ping to 10.8.8.8, and I should be able to ping. Now the other thing is that this is what the address. I will go to the status details, and you see that the first DNS server is the 100. Again, the second one is the 1.1. So that means if I say that ping sysable.com, I should be able to ping. So if I try to ping google.com, hopefully that should be resolved. So basically the traffic is allowed, authentication was successful, and we were able to see those details in the ISE also. So I hope this was informative for you, and thank you.